Hi everyone, welcome to yet another Buddy webinar. This time we are going to talk how to update WordPress plugins. We will show you a few methods and we are going to use a really nice tool called Git Updater. That's why I decided to invite a guest who has the biggest expertise when it comes to Git Updater, its creator, Andy Fragan. Andy, tell us a few words about yourself, because I know that your bio is quite an unusual one.
Hey, Magic. Thanks again for inviting me. Yeah, I do this stuff for fun, mostly in my spare time. I am a full-time trauma acute care surgeon in Southern California. And so you may ask whether I do it on nights, weekends, mornings, odd hours. The answer is yes. It just depends when I have time available. The easiest thing I found is, support questions can basically be answered almost any time. And honestly, that's because you end up with such a familiarity with your own code base after 8 or 9 years that you know what the problems are, or you know what the problems people have had are. I developed Git Updater essentially, started developing it 8 or 9 years ago to kind of scratch an itch. I had a couple of one-off plugins that didn't belong in the repo, but I was using them on several sites, and I got tired of SFTPing them up and down. And I didn't want, there was enough of them that I really didn't want to add extra files and extra processes to the actual plugin. So I figured out a way to add a couple of header lines and make it work.
And that's true. Git Updater is really a very useful tool. I use it too. Just basically because of the same reason. I just wanted a simple solution, and I knew that someone already developed it. And I am Maciek Palmowski. I am a WordPress ambassador here at Buddy, and I'm still doing the same stuff. So I'm trying to connect the WordPress world with the CI/CD world. And today we're gonna show you a few tricks about this. So before we are going to start, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments. If you are viewing us on YouTube, it's probably on your right. And if you are watching us on Facebook, it's below the movie that you are watching. Okay, so before we will dive into code, let's first discuss what are the methods of updating themes and plugins, because we have this cool feature in WordPress called one-click update, which essentially means that we just click in one place and the plugin updates. But to make plugin 2 clicks?
No, 2 places. You can either do it on the plugins page or in the core update page.
That's true. That's true. And the only problem is that your plugin has to be in the official repository just to work out of the box like this. But what are the other ways to make them updatable? Andy.
There are several other projects, many of which involve, actually I think almost all of which involve adding code to your plugin. So adding updater files, updater codes, and configuration files to your plugin. There's one that's reasonably popular. Yanis plugin updater.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find the URL, and I'll put it in the chat to that later.
For sure.
There's a lot of premium plugins that have their own, that have their own update servers, right? So they've written their own API to interact with WordPress to send out an update, or to send out an update URL. And essentially what Git Updater does, and most of the others do, is we hook into the update transient, the site update transient for either plugins or themes. And so that your WordPress installation sees it, and as long as it has the right data installed in it, it will work.
And of course, if you are more tech savvy, you can use solutions like WP CLI, because you can create a bash script using WP CLI that would update all your plugins, or you can use Composer. But in both situations, you have to have access to SSH, and it's not the solution. It's not this one-click solution that most users would expect. Also, having a plugin in the official repo comes with some difficulties. First of all, we have to put it there. We have to register it. We have to talk with people. And I know that some of you developers out there are a bit sick about thinking about talking with others. And here you have to go through the whole process of making the plugin compatible with the WordPress repository rules. And for example, Git Updater is not in the official repository. Why?
Well, early on, I asked for it to go in, and it wasn't the first plugin I've tried to have go in, and the other ones were fairly easy, and I didn't have much issue getting them in, and they came back pretty quickly. But I got I had a very nice email conversation. Always email plugins at WordPress.org. They don't like public chat because they keep a record on the email. And I was emailing with several different of the .org plugin repository maintainers. And essentially what it came down to is that because there was a guideline initially that says you can't install executable code. And well, it didn't install executable code, as in the code to update a plugin. Essentially what it boiled down to is the .org repository is a hosting platform. It's not a development platform. It wasn't designed to be a development platform. In fact, if you do try to use it as a development platform, every single time you push a commit, it will try and it does a whole lot of things that stress the system. So where you may want to make a little one-time code in Git and push it up to GitHub, that stresses the system a little too much. So what they didn't like was that they didn't want to promote other outside repositories, essentially. And I was like, yeah. Okay, I like WordPress. I like playing in your sandbox. I'm good. And so that's essentially the story. It's not, they liked the code. They didn't have any problems with it otherwise. At the time, it was just that they didn't want to promote outside repositories. See that as Bitbucket, GitHub, GitLab, wherever. I mean, at the time it was just GitHub, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and it's also worth to mention that the official repository still uses SVN. So
there's lots of ways around that, though.
Yes, because so you either have to use some workaround or learn a bit of SVN, because it's a bit different than Git. So, and especially now when everyone is so used to Git itself. Okay, so I think that we pointed out all the methods how we can make our plugin updatable, and now we will show you how to do such thing. And because let me share my screen. Now you can see it, and together with Andy, we created a very complicated plugin right here. It will do one big thing. It will show this test1 thingy in the admin panel. That's all. But as you see, this is this example plugin. It's version 1.00. And it's not updatable in any way because it's only hosted on GitHub. And I already installed the Git Updater. And as you can see, it's still not connected with each other, because here is the list of all the installed plugins and themes from Git, and we only have the Git Updater. So together with Andy, because Andy will help me here, how to make our plugin compatible with Git Updater. And believe me, it will be quite easy. So okay, this is our plugin. As you see, it doesn't do much. So if we would like to make it upgradable through Git Updater, what should we do?
Well, you have to add at least one header. And that header depends on where your plugin is hosted. So if it's hosted on GitHub, the header starts as GitHub plugin URI.
So something like this in our case: GitHub plugin URI.
And I've allowed for the short version of the code, just your repository name and your repository owner and the plugin name, or you can use the entire URL for the.
Okay, so I could add HTTPS GitHub / and so on, right?
But you don't have to, and you certainly don't need to use both. I've seen that done.
Okay, what next? Do we have to add something more? Because
well, if you're before the big push to previously all default repositories in GitHub were named master. Now they're named main. Git Updater has been written so long ago that all my defaults are to master. However, a while ago when this first started, if you put in another header that's default branch, you can name whatever your default branch is. In the case of this plugin, because it's on the main branch, it would be default plugin main. So you have to add that. So you have to add that plugin header.
Something like this. So we have the second line, and there is still the way. Will we be using the Git itself or we use the release assets? Because I always prefer to use the release assets and have all the versioning and stuff like this.
So most people don't use release assets, and that's great. Or actually, that's fine. If you do use a release asset, there's one more header. It's release asset, and the value in this case is true.
Something like this.
False just means it's absent. The caveat to using release assets or tags in general is that you must continue to do it. If you get a plugin that you forget to tag the latest version, Git Updater looks to see what if it sees tags and it looks for tags. If it sees tags, it will use the most recent tagged version number as the downloadable. So for instance, if you're starting out and your version is 1.0.0 and you tag that, and then you update your plugin to be 1.1.0, and oops, you forget to tag it. Because the version number changed, Git Updater will see a version increase, a bump, and report that there's an update available. However, if you push that update, it will reinstall 1.0.0 because that is the latest tagged release.
Okay, so
if you tag, remember to keep tagging.
Exactly. Okay, so we have this prepared, and let's update the version to 101 so we can see the difference. Let's commit the change into main branch, and well, it's committed. I have one pipeline prepared here that will copy the files over to the server, so I don't have to open some FTP client or on the server directly, and let's see what happened here, because we are now in the
You can
Git
just refresh that.
Updater.
Yeah, exactly. You can just refresh that page.
And yes, we are here, and we already
So-
see we have the example plugin right now. And if we will also go into the installed plugins, we will see that it changed. We have this GitHub icon here, which means that now the plugins are done through Git Updater. Okay, so
it's just there to show you where the actual code is hosted. So if you had plugins that were installed on Bitbucket or GitLab or even Katea locally, you would see their icons in that location.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's prepare a pipeline that will allow us to create those releases automatically in Buddy, and it will create a release in GitHub. So I created already a pipeline that is connected with this Git repo. Currently, it only has one action because I didn't want to show you my GitHub token, and because of security reasons, and we are doing it live, and I really like my repositories, and okay, so the first thing that we want to have is to we will give us the ability to enter the okay, I am so we will use yes, I saw it for a moment, but I think I'm back here. Okay, so like I said, first we will going to create this action called pass argument, and we are going to have a window in which we will enter the version number. So we will just ask for the key called plugin version, no typo, everything is correct. Okay, so this is the first thing. The second thing, because let me go back into our Git repo for a moment. As you see, files without any folder, so we have to do some cleaning first and create a folder, move everything there, and create a zip file, because GitHub CLI needs a zip file to create a release asset. So let's do it. We will and I am afraid that I'm freezing again.
You're good right now.
Okay, I am here. So we're gonna yes. So we're gonna use a local shell right now, and we're gonna do a series of operations. I will copy and paste them, but overall, we are going to every time move everything into a folder, remove all the zip files that we don't need, remove the vendor file this time because we will install Composer at some point, but we won't need to release those files. We won't need the test files in our plugin, and we will, in the end, we will create a zip file called Git Updater test plugin and the plugin version .zip. But to do this, we first have to install one important thing in our environment, because normally we wouldn't have zip. So having this operation, we'll have all our files into one zip file, and in the end we have to create a release. And this is the thing that if you never used GitHub CLI, this is a very nice tool, thanks to which you can, like in our example, create a release. To do this, you need GitHub release create a version. This is what we will pass. The file we created, and the repository name. The thing that is also very important is to have under the variables the GitHub token variable when you have to paste your GitHub access token. And there will be an article about it, so don't worry, you don't have to take screenshots of it, because you have to install the GitHub CLI on your server. There is a great tutorial on GitHub CLI website, so you can just copy and paste it. Okay, so I think that we have everything right now. This is a very simple version. So let's try to run this pipeline, and we'll the version 102 because we already have 101. And as you see, I got this window asking me for a version, so I'm building a version 102. Or sorry, let me first just update the code because I forgot to do this. Because let's start with this. So let's update the code. Sorry, my bad. Yes, it will be a mistake on my end. So let's do something like this. We have, and let's change it already to test number 2. So let's see the difference. Okay, so we have the code ready, and we can deploy the plugin right now. And like I mentioned, it should be 102. Let's proceed. And let's see what is happening.
If you use please use semantic versioning, because all the comparison functions assume semantic versioning. So if you start putting letters and words and that don't conform, it may not work. And if you change your versioning over time, it may not work.
So as you see, we have the release here, 102. So we released the plugin using Buddy. And now let's go here. So this is the first thing we have to remember. Git Updater is caching some things behind the scenes. So because we don't want to wait some time, we will just clear the cache right now. For how long will it cache all the data?
It's a 12-hour cache, and it caches all the API calls. So it doesn't necessarily cache them all at the same time, but it caches them after they run and expire.
And I cleared the cache, and here you see there is a new version of example plugin available. Update now. Let's update. Let's see what will happen. And let's refresh. Can you see it? It's test number 2. So it works. But of course, if we already have our pipeline, it would be a shame not to use it in some other way, because at this point, this plugin is very, very simple. But when you will start building your plugin and it will grow, at some point you will start building assets, running tests, and so on. It would be a good practice of running it before releasing. So every time when something goes wrong, it will automatically stop the release. That's why I also created some tests inside. There is one very simple test. I am using WP mock to show it, and it will test if the setText function is test number 4, because I was playing around with it before. So at this point, this should break because we have test number 2. So let's do a thing like this, that after passing the params, let's a PHP function. Okay, and we're gonna use this one. And we're gonna just install Composer because I already prepared all the files in the repository, and we're gonna just run Composer test. It will just run the PHP unit and run all the tests that we need. So at this point, it should break and it should not release our plugin. So let's try to run it again. Let's call it 103 because it doesn't matter right now. And now we are waiting for everything to install when it comes to unit testing. And it failed. Why? Because we have test number 2 and test number 4. And this is a great thing because we made a mistake and our not working plugin version was not released. So thanks to such a process with using release assets, you can block everything in a easier way. So that's why you should automate even your plugin release process. But right now we were using a free version of Git Updater. Oh, sorry, before I go further, everyone, if you have any questions about what we just did and you would want to ask for some details, use the comments to ask questions. Don't be afraid. We are here to answer them all. So Andy, like I was saying, we are using the free version of Git Updater, but there is a pro version too. And what are the difference between, of course, the price?
Well, free version's free. The pro version, it depends on how you can either purchase it monthly or yearly. There are four types of licenses. Exactly, that's the same screen I'm looking at. One website, 4 websites, 10 websites, or an unlimited number of websites. And it really, if you just, they all have trial periods. So you can figure it out, and you can change the. I'm sure you can change the license. It all uses Freemius to do the licensing and payment system. So you can update, or I'm sure you can update or downgrade the license, however, for whatever your choices and use. So the pro versions. Oh, you are using mine. Okay. You can do branch switching. You do remote installation of plugins and themes. You get to use REST API endpoints for certain functions, and there's WP CLI integration. So if we just go to the branch switching, let me just show you, for instance. So if we activate GitHub Updater Pro here in this one, you can see all of a sudden there's new branches. There's a branch version here. So you can pick out whatever branches there are, including the most recent tag shows up. So for there, I specifically take out certain of the plugins that are in private repositories, the GitHub Updater Pro, and there's another one that is in a private repository. The Updater edition is actually in a public repository, but you can change. So if you change it, it's the same branch. You just click master. You'll notice the plugin's not active at the moment, but you'll see how it works. So it takes it downloads the master branch. And so if we go to the plugin, and fundamentally at this point, there's no difference between the master and develop, the main branch and the develop plugin. It now shows that it's the master branch. So you can, if you're developing, you can switch back and forth between branches to test features, and then just go right back to the other branch you were on before. A lot of people find this, a lot of agencies find this useful for customer support if they're testing new features, to go back and forth and more easily switch between plugins. Because you can imagine if you had a plugin repository trying to change branches, you would have to delete, reinstall, change, and all the time. And you may not necessarily know which branch of the plugin you have running. The other thing about Git Updater is if you have a README file in there, it will take the README file And well, this is there because I'm running trunk. And so this is all, my README only says it's compatible to 5.8. But you can see if you add all the right things, it will show all the data that's normally in a that normally you get from the view details. And you can install from that as well. There's some, let's see, let's go back to, so remote installation. If you, I'll have to just show you, okay? If you go to settings, you'll now, so if you don't have, let's go back for a second. If you don't have the Updater Pro active, and you see settings, all that you see are the standard settings, okay? There's the settings, the Git, the main settings tab, the GitHub tab. If you had Bitbucket plugins and the appropriate API module installed, you would see a Bitbucket tab, or you would see a GitLab tab, or you would see a Gitea tab, or you'd see a Gist tab. This, if your plugin is set up correctly for using Git Updater, it will show up down here, your theme too. These little icon, this one icon basically says it's been ignored and doesn't connect to the API at all. And I do that because otherwise it'll just have an API timeout and people would have issues. This little thing means that it's hosted at WordPress.org. If you have a plugin that's hosted at WordPress.org and you are on the main plugin branch, it will take its updates from WordPress.org. If you are on a branch that's not the main branch, so a develop branch or some feature branch, it will take its updates from that feature branch or that other branch automatically. If you want to try any of the premium plugins or the API branches, if you go to the add-on tab, the premium ones here, so there, if you click it, it will just show a, it will take you to a freemium update, right? So you can pick your, you just have to do enter your data and enter a card or PayPal. It's on a trial period. So this one has a 7-day free trial, and you're good to go. If you don't want to do that, it will, if you want to do it and cancel the trial, perfect. You get an idea for what it does. If you're using repositories that aren't straight GitHub, which is baked in, you have to install and activate one of the other API add-ons, and just clicking on the install and activate button, it will automatically install and activate that API plugin. So here we clicked on the one for Bitbucket. We let it run. This is all running locally, so I'm not sure, Oh, wonderful. Oh, okay. So we get an API, we get an error code for an access token because it requires Bitbucket requires an access token. Otherwise it won't run. So if we go back to our settings page, I don't have a Bitbucket plugin there, but let's pick one up, right? And I can show you what that. So let me activate Pro, and you'll see the remote installation too. So in this case, we have one here. Hit Bitbucket, and if you put in your Bitbucket username and password, it will take it here. And let's see, I'm not that concerned since they're all coded anyway, and you can't see them. Whoops, you can see them. Hang on, let me have to do that on this side.
Yeah, this was the reason why I
exactly
why I pasted the token before the webinar. Yeah, especially
that. Watch this. Let me cheat. Let me do this. That's that tab. Oops, that's not the right tab. Let me show you. Let me show you this tab. Oops, where'd it go? Okay.
Too many tabs, right?
Yeah, too many tabs in too many different places, right? So here I've got, this is my local development page. So you can ignore a lot of these things. But if we go to Git Updater, you can see that I have, everybody says when it's slow in the things, they have different things. So here you can see that it's really, it's working on the hitting the API calls, because I haven't been there yet today. And you can see that it's starting to go down, right? If I refresh, it'll take the next one down, and it'll probably pop a couple out. If you have a custom plugin, a private plugin, and it will show up here, and you can add an extra token for it. If you have a GIST, it will list the GISTs. GISTs are basically public. So it shows the GIST that I have up there. Here's the Bitbucket. Here's the Bitbucket tab, and you can see the plugins that I have. And a lot of these are just, almost all these are just testing plugins. Some of the installed plugins and themes aren't. Sorry for the. Dude, feel like the Jeopardy countdown here.
Yeah, but this is something obvious, that every time that you need your local host or internet connection to be fast, it's
right.
not. Yeah. Yeah, but it looks like Bitbucket is.
So these tabs are generated dynamically. If you want to install a theme or a plugin from here.
Yes, because we mostly concentrated on plugins, because I mostly create plugins rather than themes.
Sure.
But you can, of course, use Git Updater to update themes too. The only thing you can't update, and we were discussing it before going live, is the must-use plugins, because of their nature.
And and must-use plugins aren't updatable. Yes. Under normal circumstances. There's a way around it. And the way around it is to put a loader plugin in the must-use plugins that loads your other plugin. Now, the only issue with that then is that you shouldn't activate your regular plugin, because then you'll have both plugins activated, and badness can happen. So I actually have a loader plugin in Git Updater if you want to use it as an MU plugin, and I have code in that to basically strip out any ability to activate it, delete it, and things like that. All right, so let's come on. Well, anyway, if we go back here, we see how when we added that to the added the Bitbucket, you can see the Bitbucket plugin is in and active, and we didn't go in and activate it. It installed and activated automatically. Let's see if I'm back yet. This is what happens when you're testing with 40, 50 plugins that are pounding the GitHub API. So if you want to remote install a theme, you put the URI in here. So whatever that happens to be, you put the branch name in here, and this is a dynamic field to initially, if you don't have anything if you don't have any repositories or you haven't installed the API, for Bitbucket, Gist, or GitLab, the only two things you'll have is GitHub and a zip file. So you actually can't take a zip file URL and install it. So let's, if we did this, for instance, we'll go copy the test plugin, right? And it's a zip file. It's in the main branch.
Exactly.
And the URI is there. And so
yes, and this is a much more simpler way.
And this is what you have to do. This is what you have to do for release assets. If you just try to install the release asset from the base name, it won't work, or it will give you a non-built version. So if we go back to settings now, and we didn't activate it, but we can later if you want. If you go back to settings and the GitHub tab, you will see the example
plugin. Yes, is there.
Okay, is there.
So this was a much simpler way of installing plugin rather than I did with creating a one more pipeline just to copy files from GitHub to my server.
And you can actually do the same sort of thing from the standard WP CLI. Let's see, where's example plugin?
It should be.
And so there's no other version. There's no other branch, so it doesn't have another branch, but it does have the release asset.
The releases
asset. So you can install the last or the current release assets. And what that'll do is, if you've been playing with your plugin or you've been modifying someone's plugin, you can just reinstall the release branch and the last release, and it will basically overwrite the plugin. So it's like a reinstall. And so it's doing that now.
Yes, and we also were, because we had a short chat a few days ago, you also showed me a rather fascinating way how to do the thing that we done with Buddy, with the whole pipeline and with creating the GitHub release without updating the code. This was one of my favorite features, and this is something I just can't wait for you to show. Because
so all release assets basically are stored on AWS servers with a 5-minute timeout. So you get this big long URL for the update. But if you go back to your plugins folder, you'll see that it does. It basically reinstalled the same zip file. Use the maybe I should reload my site. Okay, so it still says 102, which is what it should say.
Exactly.
Let's go back to the other one because it's quicker. So I don't have I can eliminate. This is because they're asking for a password in the a token, a pseudo token actually, because in Bitbucket, a Bitbucket pseudo token is basically your username, a colon, your username, a colon, and your password, your app password. If you enter it on the install page, it'll do that for you automatically. If you don't do that, so if you enter it on the install page, it'll do that automatically and combine it and store it. If you don't, it'll not do it. Do you want me to show the additions?
Yeah, because in our case we were in this position that we could edit our own code, but there are a lot of plugins that we would love to.
So you'll notice when I deactivated the Bitbucket plugin, the error message went away.
Yeah. So
I have a copy of Newspack from Automatic installed, and I have purposely downgraded that version from the current release. You'll notice that the only way it's as far as I know, and I've checked with people who work with Automatic, it is a free and open source plugin. They don't charge for it. They don't do any of that stuff. But the only way to download the current version is to actually go and pick out the latest release asset and download it. And if you look at their, this, because all this stuff gets put out otherwise. So if you want it on your self-hosted, try it out, just download the latest release asset and the theme and do it. There's no ability to update this within.
Which is also not quite a good security practice, because if at some version they will have some security flaw, people just won't know that they should update it.
Oh, let me go to this one. So so I have Newspack activated. If we go to our, we activate additions, I have already put the data for Newspack in there, and we'll show it to you later. But after it's active, it will show that there's an update. Because now it's in the, it's set up in Git Updater. So if we hit update and we do our updating, it should be 1.6.5. Okay. And if we go back to our Git Updater settings, we see that Newspack is now listed, because obviously it's listed. But here's the additions that we had to do. So again, this is a dynamic since last time, so I fixed it for you, Mention. If you don't have any of the other ones installed, it'll only let you do GitHub Updater, GitHub themes or plugins to add. You add the repository slug. In this case, for a plugin, it's the repository name and the main plugin file. The URL is the URL to the repository. The primary branch, very important, have to put it down there. In Newspack's case, the branch is release. And do they use a release asset? The answer is you check the box. You save the changes. And now, even though that plugin has none of those headers, yes, it still works. It still works with Git Updater.
Yeah, and personally, this is apart from the core Git Updater, the best addition to Git Updater there is, because we don't always have the possibility to change the code, and in some cases they just don't want us to do it. Okay, so I think that we went through all the cool features of Git Updater Pro. So I hope that if you were hesitating which version to choose, I hope that Andy has helped you to pick the Pro version, because I know that he's doing such a wonderful job that even paying for Pro just as a thank you for all his work would be a cool thing.
And this is another application in the GitHub family, if you will, or the Git Updater family.
Oh, yeah.
If you are a developer and you have a lot of clients that use the same plugins, you can either show their sites and all the plugins that are on it. Yes, this is my online test site. Or you can do it like this, and it will take those files. You can push an update. So this is a push. This isn't a pull. This won't show you if plugins have updates available. But what it will do is it will update the plugin to the latest version of whatever you've got there. So if I update on the core rollback plugin, it should run its update and it should give me data on what I've done up here, right? So it updated to this location, this plugin, and then it tells you what the update data is. So you can see it updated from the main branch, because that's the branch that I have installed. That's the default branch on that site. So if you have the same plugin on multiple sites, it will show the plugin and then it'll say multiple sites, leading down this slate, and you can hit update. It'll update all those sites automatically.
Yes, this is also something useful, especially when you are running an agency and would like to update many things at once. Okay, so I think that it's time to start wrapping up all the things, because we discussed quite a few things already. So first we discussed how we can make our plugin updatable. So we know that we can either do it by using the official repository, which but it requires first of all using SVN, having some contact with other people, and sometimes your plugin may just not be accepted because of its nature, just like Git Updater is. We also know that there are other methods, the Git Updater, because we discussed almost an hour about it. But we can also use WP CLI, we can use Composer. You also mentioned this plugin update checker and mentioned it
Correct.
in the comments.
It won't let me put the whole thing in there, so that's why I kind of shortened it down.
Yeah, so this is also a method. We also showed you how easy it is to make your plugin updatable thanks to Git Updater. And I think this is a really great option for either for agencies who has a lot of plugins that they use throughout all the clients, and they would like to keep them updated, but not necessarily they would like to put them in the official repository, because it's more private thing rather than public. And
yes, it works with private repositories.
Oh, exactly. And the Git Updater Pro also works with private repositories.
Regular Git Updater does.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Exactly. My bad. You're right. And in the end, Andy showed us some additional things that Git Updater Pro can do, and how powerful it can be. So now it's time to see if there are some questions. I see that we only have currently one. How does this compare to W Pusher, asks Scott. So
WP,
I would. This is something.
Okay.
Yeah, this is something on the different way. I would call Git Updater from the user perspective WP puller.
Well, yeah. Well, yes. I mean, WP Pusher is a SaaS product, and essentially it does, I think, most of the same things. There's a couple things in. I mean, obviously, because it's a SaaS product, you don't have WP CLI integration. I'm pretty sure it may use REST endpoints to update with, but I don't think that you can use those. So, for instance, if you wanted to take the REST endpoint, Magic, if you come back to where I am.
Of course.
If you wanted to take the REST endpoint for updating, you take the initial REST endpoint and you put it in there, and you can add. So this one won't do anything at the moment because it doesn't have the no plugin or theme was specified, right? But you can add that into your GitHub in the settings pile for webhooks, and then set it for every time you either make a push or you tag a release, it will automatically push that code out to that site, to the site that you specify from the endpoint.
Yeah. And
so that basically is an automatic update, or at least a method of automatic update. Works. It won't work with a release asset because it's not built. Okay, so that's the kicker, I think. At least I think it won't. I haven't tested it lately. At least not with that. So that's kind of where we're. There's a number of things. I believe you can install plugins and themes with it. It certainly doesn't have the additions module or things like that, but it's very versatile. The developer Peter Sun has done a really good job, a really nice job with it, and I think he recently sold it. And I don't remember who sold it to. So
yes, he sold it together with Branch.
Right.
Yeah.
Branch basically became, his CI pipeline WP pusher integration.
Yes, that's true. And if someone if someone liked Branch CI, I can recommend switching to Buddy, because it can really does all the same things, and also some others, because this was if I would say, Branch was very limited in to WordPress, which was cool for WordPress developers, but for non-WordPress developers or more universal agencies, what can I say? I can recommend Buddy much more.
Of course.
Yes. So that was the only question that we got. And Andy, thank you very much for discussing so many things about updating plugins with me. And what can I say? I hope that in some time we will find some other topics so we could talk together again. And I hope that. And I can already say that in about a week or two, there should be an article about what we discussed here. So if you prefer to read rather than listen, what is happening on your end, Andy? Because there was I hear some noises.
Oh, maybe the gardener's outside. Sorry.
Oh, I get it. No problem. So like I mentioned, the article will be up in about a week or two. So if you prefer to read about what we discussed, then we will send information when it's created over our social media. And that's all for tonight. Thank you everyone, and have a nice day or night. It depends.
Thank you very much, Magic.
Fine.
And sorry for all the delays and the loading times.
It happens. Thanks again, Andy. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Magic.